Literacy, and specifically childhood literacy. It's a problem that most communities across our country confront. But here in the Lehigh Valley, there's a few groups coming together to find new solutions for it. So what is Lehigh Valley Reads, and what are they doing to help our literacy rate across the valley? Tonight I'm joined by Angela Zanelli, the campaign director for Lehigh Valley Reads, to discuss those questions and more. That's all coming up right here, right now. I'm Sam Chen, and this is Face the Issues. Good evening and welcome to Face the Issues. I'm your host, Sam Chen. Literacy, and specifically childhood literacy, we all know that it's a problem our communities face, not just here in the Lehigh Valley, but across Pennsylvania and across the country. Every community is trying to find some solution to their literacy problem. But here in the Lehigh Valley region, there's a program called Lehigh Valley Reads. I'm pleased tonight to introduce Angela Zanelli, who's the campaign director for Lehigh Valley Reads. Angela, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
Absolutely, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Let's start at just the 30,000 foot level. For people who don't know what Lehigh Valley Reads is, can you tell us a little bit about the program, what it is that you guys do, things like that?
Sure. So we are a collective impact initiative, and high level view, we're a grade level reading campaign. Okay. So we're focused on making sure that all Lehigh Valley third graders are reading on grade level by the time they move on to fourth grade by 2025. Okay. Right now, about a third of our kids moving from third to fourth grade are not reading on grade level. So we have about a 35% gap to close.
What does it mean to say reading on grade level when we talk about literacy? Because we hear this a lot, and you can actually see it in books. They'll have a number that dictates the approximate grade level, like a 6th grade level, 8th grade level. They usually say newspapers are written on like a 6th to 8th grade level. What does that mean? What are the factors we're looking for when we say a grade level? Is it vocab? Is it grammar? Is it?
Sure. Right now, the one tool that we have to measure literacy across our state is the standardized PSSAs. Okay. The first time a child in elementary school will take a PSSA is in third grade, so it's really our first look at a standardized score that really tests their reading and their literacy overall. From birth to third grade, kids are learning to read, and then from third grade on, they're reading to learn. So that third grade is really a pivotal milestone in education. Once a child leaves third grade without being able to read on grade level, it actually increases the chance that they won't graduate high school by about 12. 12 times more likely, let's say, that they wouldn't graduate high school. Yes.
I like the way you put that up to third grade, children are learning to read. And then from third grade on, or fourth grade on, I suppose, they're reading to learn. So this is not just a matter of, if I can't read or I'm a little behind on reading, then maybe it takes me longer to get through something, or this is very different. This is a situation where it's going to snowball if the problem's not corrected.
Exactly. You're exactly correct. And what happens is the further a child goes through their education, not being able to read on grade level, it takes longer and longer to catch up. I mean, I think I saw a statistic at one point that said if, a child who is in middle school or high school, they'd have to go to school for 12 hours a day to make up ground for all the grades that they lost beforehand, not being able to read. Right.
And then a lot of times schools end up just passing these students on, just grade by grade, and then they end up, to your point, a lot of them don't graduate college. Some of them don't get their GED, or don't graduate high school.
Some don't graduate high school.
Some don't get their GEDs. And then that leads to a lot of issues when it comes to jobs, marketplace, job search.
Right.
The third grade, and so you're explaining why this is a pivotal moment. Post third grade is really when the learning outside of reading begins. Right. And if you can't read, all your other subjects get impacted.
Right.
You're saying 1 in 3 third graders aren't reading on grade level?
In the Lehigh Valley.
In the Lehigh Valley region. Why do we think this is? Not putting you on the hot spot to say you know all the answers here on why. I'm sure there's a variety of reasons, but is there a driving trend that we're seeing?
There are a few, and I'll just, generalize, we'll gloss over them just a bit, but I would say one of the major issues is that our kids are actually arriving in kindergarten not ready for kindergarten.
Oh, wow.
So what many people might not realize is that learning actually begins from birth. So parents and caregivers are our children's first teachers.
Yeah.
Talking and reading and singing to your kids actually exposes them to 30 million more words when they enter kindergarten, or by the time they enter kindergarten, than if you didn't, take a few minutes a day to do those things with your child. So that's definitely something that we're working on, is to spread awareness about that, how important it is, to do these things at home. Also, the summer slide. So there are a lot of kids in our community that don't go to any sort of structured activity during the summer. They don't have any learning experiences. They're not going to the library. And over time, the time a child spends at home during the summer not reading or not brushing up on any type of literacy skills, it actually sets them months back.
Right.
So they can actually be on grade level or maybe just a bit behind, and then when they enter that next grade, they've already lost a few months of education, of literacy that they've learned. So the reinforcement's important.
That's a great point. And we know that habits are formed by consistency.
Right.
And if we're taking this 3 months and we're not investing in that consistency and building the habit, then we're going to backslide. One of the things in society that we've seen is that libraries are starting to fall out of use. Now, part of it is that there's so much information that is now at our fingertips with the smartphone. And before, people had to go to the library to use a computer to apply for a job, or go to the library to read the newspaper. Now people are just pulling up the news on their phone. So there's a part of it that is just functional. There's another part of it that seems to be people who just no longer have a desire to read, and there's a reading fall off. Is that contributing to this literacy rate, or is the literacy rate contributing to that, or is that a little bit of both? Does it make your job more challenging?
I think that's a good question. I don't know if I have the scientific answer to that. I can tell you, though, that the schools that we work with in the Lehigh Valley, and when we talk about the region, it is Lehigh and Northampton counties, which includes 17 school districts. I do know that a lot of our school districts are moving toward incorporating technology into learning. That's not to say that they'll replace having books at home or books in a library, but there are many families that, for whatever reason, whether it's they'd rather use technology or they just don't have the resources to have books at home, helping kids build home libraries is more important now than ever, because obviously it will help them learn to read and continue to read at home, but reading is a way that not just kids, but we experience things. We're either there or we read about it. Right.
That's a great point. And it's what I serve as an adjunct professor at Northampton Community College outside of my regular work, and it's always fascinating to me. And it's not a lot of them, but from time to time there are students who, and I asked at the start of the semester in the survey, just what's your favorite book? And it's always fascinating to me how some of the students say, oh, I don't read. I don't have a favorite book. I don't do that. That's not my thing. And these are students who can read, and it's always curious to me of whether that cultural move. And so I do very much admire this use of technology to help further the ability to read and literacy rates. Let me ask you again on this third grade, this idea of third grade and this pivotal moment. You had mentioned earlier that third graders, if you don't complete third grade on reading level, so they could actually pass everything else and move on to fourth grade. There's just off on their reading level. This makes them 12 times less likely to complete high school, which again has ramifications in the job market and so forth. I know just from my work that also when governments are considering prisons and expanding their prisons, they're also looking at third grade literacy and to some extent failure rates, which is shocking because we're talking about 7 to 8 year olds. And this correlation, obviously the numbers speak for themselves, but if you're talking to, say, a parent of a third grader or a parent of someone who's younger, to your point, this starts earlier, what do you say to them about the importance of literacy for their kid? They might look at it and say, well, they're only 5 or 6.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I usually tell people, whether we're tabling an event or we're coming out to just speak to other community organizations, is that we don't have 100% of our kids reading on grade level, and that's usually shocking. It was actually shocking to me. I have 3 kids in the Bethlehem area school district. At home we read a lot. That's just the way we grew up. But that's not the way everybody has grown up.
Right.
So that's usually what I say first is, hey, did you know that we're leaving a third of our kids behind? And then this is why it's important. And that's when we go into, it's not only you should read because you're going to do well in school. It's you should read, and you need to learn how to read because you're going to do well in life.
Right.
This is all about community transformation, about workforce development. We want to make sure that 10 years from now, we're sending a skilled workforce out there to fill lots of jobs here in the Valley, and that those people stay here in the Valley to make our community better.
Right. And if you want to have a family and lead a family and get a job or lead a community, these are necessary tools. I love the point you make. This is not just about a grade or a test or even passing third grade. This is about life.
Right.
And being able to live life, having a good quality of life. So that's great. Angela, thank you. Don't go away. We're going to take a quick break, and then I want to get into Lehigh Valley Reads and just some of the solutions and programs that you guys are running. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Face the Issues. Angela, thank you again for just joining us, and also for the incredibly important work that you do through Lehigh Valley Reads. We spent the last 10, 15 minutes talking about literacy and some of the shocking statistics, to your point, when you tell people that we're not at 100% literacy when we move on from third grade. That shocks people. We almost think it's a given, but this is something that not just in the Valley, almost any community across our country, they face this challenge. Lehigh Valley Reads, what you guys are doing, you're trying to do something about it. I'm a firm believer that identifying the problem is step one, but we can't just leave it there. And we have to develop solutions, right? And so, and we can, sometimes we'll disagree on solutions and argue about solutions, but the idea is we have to move the solutions. We can't just identify the problem. Talk to me about Lehigh Valley Reads, some of the things you had mentioned earlier. What's the goal for Lehigh Valley Reads, and what is it that your organization hopes to do?
So let me start by saying that Lehigh Valley Reads is a collective impact initiative. And right now we have 2 nonprofits in the Valley leading the charge. One of them is PBS 39, and the other is the United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley. So both of these organizations have come together, and we are working toward basically kind of like a lot of the things we talked about, making sure that parents know that they need to be talking, reading, and singing to their children. How do we combat the summer slide? How do we make sure that kids are actually showing up at school every day? How do we deal with kids that have had traumatic experiences in their life? And how do we train our educators and give them the skills to know how to deal with that, so that it's not a setback for literacy and just their education as a whole. And those are some of the things that we're focused on, but we can't do it alone. This is a large-scale issue that affects our entire community. So how do you tackle something like that? You get lots of people together who know lots of things, and then you organize and you mobilize them. And that's kind of where my job comes in. And we work very closely with the education staff at the United Way. And they are really the direct line into the community for those organizations and partners that are delivering the direct services. So we're talking YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, Casa Guadalupe, City Bike Works. Everybody has, sort of a handle, or their little handle on helping our community out. And what we're trying to do right now is we're trying to scale up all those programs and services across the Valley throughout our 17 school districts.
And the goal, if I remember correctly, is you want to see by the year 2025, so we're about 5 years out, 100% literacy rate coming out of third grade into fourth grade. And that's really the focus area. But to your point earlier, this is not just something that we don't just tackle third grade. We don't go in at third grade and say, okay, we got to make sure everyone's reading up to level. I'm assuming there are different areas that you're going to be working in. One of the first things that came to my mind when you were mentioning the different groups like City Bike Works, not necessarily a literacy program in and of themselves. How does a group like that play into the work that you're doing? How can someone like that, because we're going to have viewers watching this going, wait a minute, I'm not in education, but neither is City Bike Works.
Right.
How does a group like that play into the mission?
Sure. I'll give you a great example, and this is one of the ways that I kind of wrapped my head around this too, because there's a lot to think about and there's a lot of partners involved. So think about, let's use the Boy Scouts as an example, okay? And you have a school that's struggling with attendance. You have only 70% of your kids coming to school at any one time. You know, so there's different things you can do and different interventions. One of those is having a Boy Scout program at your school. Yeah. So the United Way, you know, invests in those types of programs to bring them into schools, because one of the incentives to coming to school sometimes is staying afterwards and having the opportunity to participate in a program like that.
Oh, that's great. And so groups like Bikeworks can have similar incentives that ultimately can lead to increased literacy rates. So it's not just a direct approach. We're looking at indirect and outside forces and support structures as well.
Right.
To really come together as a collective, to your point earlier.
Right, and the United Way has done a great job in, you know, identifying great community partners, and 80% of their investments goes to education, so their community school network, and then also programs like we just talked about.
Yeah. What are some of the things that, and you talked about with the summer slide, where students, and this, to your point, there are schools in different parts of the country that actually have experimented with what they call year-long school, which is instead of taking 3 months off, you'll have about 3 months off, but it's scattered throughout. And the idea was we have to keep consistency. This is, I know when I was studying foreign languages, this is one of the biggest things they say, which is you got to take it every day. Even colleges will do it. They'll say most of your classes are you know, every other day, but foreign language has to come in every day because you need that consistency. What are some ways that Lehigh Valley Reads is looking at combating that summer slide? I mean, what are some solutions that we can be putting in place, even to say parents, to say how can they help combat that summer slide?
Well, one, obviously, and number one is really spreading awareness, right? Letting parents know that, you know, hey, even if you can't afford a summer camp this year, or, you know, you can only send your kid to basketball camp because that's what they really want to do, you know, have them at the library at least once a week. So it's just spreading awareness about, you know, things that families and caregivers, parents can do. I mean, I guess the very broad answer to your question is what Lehigh Valley Reads is doing is we are basically, you know, kind of taking inventory of what programs are out there for kids right now, and how do we, A, increase the amount of programs available in the summer for kids, and then B, also just improve the quality of them. You know, making sure that there's a literacy component. It doesn't all need to be, you know, sitting in a classroom. You know, you can integrate lots of different things, science, you know, physical activities, but just having that literacy component. I would say that's pretty much the general answer to your question. And I think one of the other things that we're really focused on right now, especially with summer learning, is coming up with a common way to measure it. So it's kind of like when you have a standardized test like the PSSA, it's the same across the board. So it's comparing apples to apples. But different school districts measure a kid's proficiency, you know, students' proficiencies different ways. So if you have children from different school districts, different schools in the same program, and they're going back to school and their proficiency is being assessed differently, it's apples to oranges to eggplants to tomatoes. So, you know, that's kind of one thing that we're struggling with, and we've brought lots of folks to the table who are in the summer learning space to discuss that and discuss solutions.
That's a great point. We have to, you know, to know how the progress is being made, we have to be on the same page as far as how we measure that. Let me ask you this. Lehigh Valley Reads, I know, has several pillars. I think it's 6 pillars that they look at, 6 areas that they can see, almost categories of where they can invest to really help guide to the ultimate goal. What are those 6? Can you kind of go through those? And, you know, what role does each play? And we glossed over a lot of them already, but I'll go through them for you. So first and foremost is the early childhood education.
We are focused on that birth to age 8 group, and just spreading the word that hey, as soon as that baby's born, you can start talking to them and singing to them, and it really counts at the end of the day. The second is chronic absenteeism. How do we make sure that kids are showing up every day? We need to be able to get that information and that messaging out to parents too. Even if your child is in kindergarten, it's still important that they come to school every single day. We also have summer learning that we just spoke about. We're doing a lot of work with trauma-sensitive schools, providing training for our actually elementary, middle schools, and high schools for the educators to know how to help students that are having traumatic experiences at home. And then did I do 4 or 5?
I think that's 3.
I did
summer
3,
learning,
4.
trauma.
So the 5th is the United Way's Community School Network. Right now, I believe, I think there might be more this incoming school year, but the school year that just ended, there were 28 community schools across the Lehigh Valley. And what that is it's just a different type of model that a school uses, making the school the actual hub of the community. So you can find different types of services there. There's a community school coordinator, that's kind of the glue of all that. Some of our community schools have behavioral health specialists. They might have a food pantry, a coat closet at the school. So it's a place for parents and families to come for support and resources that kind of, run the gamut. And last but not least, we are focusing right now on providing literacy supports for educators, schools, and school districts. And we just launched a micro-credential program through Penn State Lehigh Valley.
That's great.
And what it does is, for a very subsidized cost, we're offering teachers explicit instruction, so giving them the skills to actually teach literacy using the science of reading, which we've seen has had great results in some of our districts in the Valley, and we're giving other teachers the opportunity to get those skills for a very reduced cost.
And so, and these are teachers who are already teaching in the classroom.
Yeah, so it's sort of a continuing education. Teachers come in with a base knowledge of literacy, how to teach literacy, and this is just furthering that for them.
And it equips them better to then engage those students. And so what I really get from these 6 pillars is that it's a very robust and interdisciplinary approach to tackling the issue. You guys have the goal you set for yourself is 2025, but I mean, and whether that's 5 years out or just or the goal was shorter or further. I mean, at the end of the day, what we're really doing is just setting a goal to help the community better itself. Say we have people that watch and they say, hey, I would love to get involved, I'd love to help. Obviously, there's, to your point, a number of different ways. Groups like City Bike Works are helping. But where can they go? Who do they reach out to if someone wants to get involved?
Sure. So anybody can go right to our website. So it's www.lehighvalleyreads.org. And there's a place to sign up for our newsletter. So that's a great way to sort of keep up to date with what we're doing, what types of events we're having, where we might be in the community on a given day. And then there's also a place where you can email me directly if you're interested in additional volunteer opportunities or you want to support the program in some way.
That's great. Thank you so much. Don't go away. We'll come right back after these messages. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Face the Issues. Angela, thank you again for just taking the time and for being here, for what you do. Want to ask you this about Lehigh Valley Reads. Obviously this is a big issue and no one denies that. Everyone knows literacy is a big issue. The question always on these things is, what do we do? What role do we have? And what role can we play in this? You've been at this with Lehigh Valley Reads. Obviously you guys have ambitious goals, but you have the pillars set in place to get there, and really an approach that involves everyone. What is, in your mind, the best part of your job? What do you love doing? What gets you out of bed every morning to really just hit go on this?
Well, first and foremost, I have the privilege of working with 2 amazing teams at 2 of the most wonderful organizations in the Lehigh Valley. So PBS 39, the United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley. I get to leverage the connections, the networks, and the expertise of all of my colleagues. So that's really just been a wonderful experience. And this work is it's fulfilling. Having been a nonprofit for my entire career, it's a great opportunity to get out in your local community, and to meet families, to meet the educators, to go to the schools, to hand out lunches, and to just really immerse yourself in what's going on. I have, my job's more of the 50,000 foot view, a lot of strategy, a lot of problem solving, which I love. But it's also very rewarding to then get into the community and meet with those folks, and really have a great conversation with them.
Yeah, I always find it neat. The strategy stuff can be great, and what hole do we jump through here, or what do we jump over there, and it's even better when the result of that is that you can help your neighbors and you can help the community grow. That's incredible. You mentioned this to me in between sessions. You have a mascot now?
Yes.
Can you tell us briefly about the mascot?
Sure. So if you've seen any of our stuff around, we have a little apple. His name's Corey.
I love that.
And he's actually live action. I picked him up about 2 weeks ago in Philly, and he is available to show up at community events. So if anybody is interested, if you're with a community organization or you're having an event at a school, we are available to come out.
That's great. I love that, Corey.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So thank you so much, Angela, for all that you do, for your time. Appreciate it. That is all the time we have tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. And my thanks to Angela Zanelli for not just joining us tonight, but for the work that she does every day. And if you want to volunteer for Lehigh Valley Reads, you can visit their website at lehighvalleyreads.org. Tune in again next week as we unpack another issue. Until then, my name is Sam Chen. On behalf of all of us here at Face the Issues, thank you and good night.